All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast Day here. Me and Nick will be doing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Rutgers Scarlett Knights. Look at this coaching staff. Greg Schiano, it's his third year. In his second tenure back here at Rutgers, 8-14 record overall. Just a pretty solid mark, I'd say, for what he's been able to come in and do. Sean Gleason, the offensive coordinator, his third season after arriving from Oklahoma State. He was considered one of the young hot guns in college football as a coordinator. And guess what? Schiano plucked him from Oklahoma State. Gleason is from New Jersey, so that certainly helps. But I think Schiano, Nick, played a big role in getting Gleason over here. Rutgers is no longer just a punching bag in this conference. They've played some really tough games the last two seasons, and I expect that to continue with Schiano at the helm.
I wasn't totally sold on bringing Greg Schiano back for a second lap when Rutgers did it 3 years ago. I got a little concerned if that was the right move. I thought they maybe should have gone a different direction. But so far, I've been impressed by the progress this program has made under him. Bringing Gleason in was a huge get and a surprising hire that I loved. This team last year, they were pretty good at times. They're not the punching bag they used to be. They give up a good fight against a lot of the bigger programs in the Big Ten, and they're no longer rolling over and dying and losing every game in the conference. They played in a bowl game last year. Yes, sure, it was on a technicality because of a COVID out, but they got to play in a bowl game last year, which is huge for this program. The money that comes from that's awesome. And in general, I think that Schiano is the right guy to lead this team. He's right where he belongs. He's a great fit, and I think he's a great coach to continue leading this, and we've seen it in the transfer portal too. He's made some good moves there.
Obviously, he's a defensive wizard, so he has brought great energy and tenacity to that side of the ball. But the offense, Nick, has been a long struggle, especially at quarterback. This position has not been very good for the school in recent memory. No overall starter for his third year now. He's been in college football since 2017. This is his third different school. He went from 175 yards per game to 139 this past year with an even TD to INT ratio of 7. He's also the lead returning rusher with 297 yards. What do you expect out of Verdal, who's been around a long time?
Verdal has a lot of experience, which I like, but I get a little concerned because I don't know if the production's there. 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last year, 60% completion percentage, and about 1,800 yards passing. He is good on the ground. I do like the dual threat ability he possesses, but I just think that he's not the quarterback that for the future of Rutgers. They're going to have to try and recruit somebody, hopefully somebody in-state they can bring in and develop, because he's just more of a stopgap kind of guy. He's a game manager. He's not going to blow you away, but I don't think he's going to make a whole lot of mistakes week in, week out. But when you're playing against these tough Big Ten defenses, it's hard for a quarterback for a program like this to kind of fight against that super talented teams.
Now, Gavin Wimsatt and Evan Simon, redshirt freshmen, are behind him at quarterback, but I don't expect them to get the nod over Verdal, at least early on in the year. Maybe if he really struggles, and maybe in the middle to back half of the year, then maybe we'll see them on the field. Looking at this running game, another part of the offense, Nick, that's been quite stagnant is this backfield, 133 to 140 yards per game for the last 4 years. Montenagi's back, 5'9", 200. Aaron Young, 5'10", 205. But they replace a speedster in Isaiah, who heads in the NFL. What can they do to get this run game more of a spark? Because they had a speedster last year that ran a 4.3 something, and that's still all they managed to produce on the ground. So what can we do to get more of a spark here from Rutgers' ground game?
I expect to see Aaron Young step up here and be a lead back for this offense potentially. I really like he can do it. I like some of the film I've seen of him in recent weeks. He seems to be developing well for Rutgers. But in general, I just get concerned with this running game because the offensive line is not doing them a whole lot of favors, but the talent is not really there, and they kind of wasted the talent on running back, like you mentioned. The guy, Isaiah, leading them last year with 650 yards on the ground, but only 3.9 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns. It's just not really what you want to see out of your lead back. And hopefully they can kind of change the scheme maybe a little bit and get the running game involved, and hopefully they can bail out the passing game.
Yeah, they've had some talented backs over the last couple of years. Gus Edwards, remember him? He's in the NFL now. So this team's never really lacked talent. The Raheem Blackshear, even, he went to Virginia Tech, but they've had some talented guys at running back. Just have not been able to get a lot out of them. Looking at the offensive line, though, I think something that's really going to help them is adding 4 transfers up front. 3 of them are pegged as starters on the depth chart I'm looking at. Tyler Willie, 6'6", 325. He's been at a variety of stops. Curtis Dunlap, 6'5", 335 from Minnesota. And J.D. Dorenzo, he's also 300-plus pounds. They added 2 big bodies to help this running game out. I love that they added some size and some veteran guys from other programs. The pass protection I thought was quite solid last year, but overall this unit needs to continue to get better, to establish more balance. And I think this offensive line, I'm excited for it this year, Nick, because of those 4 transfers and all the size they have. These guys are big and nasty. I think we could certainly see a big improvement in the trenches here.
I'm extremely excited for this offensive line. I love the position that how they saw they needed to grow this position. They attacked the portal and made some work on it. I love DiLorenzo and Tyler on the left side. That's a new look left tackle, left guard position. The entire left side offensive line is brand new. I think it looks great. I love the potential they have, and I think Curtis Dunlap as well. Solid pickup in the portal. I like him at right guard. I think he slots in there perfectly. I like the experience. These guys have played a lot at their previous schools. They come in, hopefully they can work together this offseason, kind of build that cohesion in the offensive line during spring. As long as these guys are all working together and firing on full cylinders, I think this offensive line will be really strong, be a lot better than it has been in years past with Scarlett Knights.
I think the running game has potential to go up, and I think the passing game as well. And you look at this group of pass catchers. Taj Harris comes over to replace Bo Melton's production, a great deep threat. He was originally going to transfer to Kentucky. I'm not sure what happened there. I think some academic issues leads him to Rutgers. 500-plus yards in his first 3 years at Syracuse, had nearly 200 yards in his first 3 games last year. He was on track for another big season. And, that's playing on an offense that all they did last year was run the ball. They barely threw it. They also got Sean Ryan from West Virginia, a little over 1K career yards in 4 years. And then they got Aaron Crushank, Isaiah Washington, Shaheem Jones as well. So I think this, the passing game should hit that 200-yard per game mark this season. That's the expectation from me.
I really like this passing game. I think it's super potential. Taj Harris has been one of my favorite wide receivers outside of the big guys, one of those underrated wide receivers in college football for me. I love the production he can do. It was a pretty poor Syracuse offense throughout his career. As a freshman, he set a record for Syracuse with 40 catches and 565 yards in that freshman season. I thought the Kentucky fit was great for Harris. I was excited for him to go there. I thought him and Will Levis would be great together. Something obviously didn't work out. He ends up coming back to New Jersey where he played high school, where he grew up, and ends up with Rutgers. And I think this is a great fit. I expect him to have a great season for Rutgers. I expect to see him get targeted a whole lot early on. I think he fits in really well with this offense. And Sean Ryan as well is definitely another great transfer to pick up. I think he has some serious experience, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Now, looking at the Scarlett Knights defense, they allowed nearly 37 points per game in 2019, got that down to 25.6 points per game this past year. The biggest problem is 5 starters are back. That's not a lot of returning production. They've done a much better job of getting this front 7 to flourish under Schiano, even though they did regress a good bit last year. They kind of disappointed in that area. And they're quite depleted in this front 7. Aaron Lewis, he was a solid rotational piece last year. He's going to be great for them on the D-line. Mayan Ahoatu, and Maja, they were also pretty good rotational guys. The biggest thing I like about this front 7 is they were able to get young guys on the field. Kayonte Hamilton, he had 22 tackles. He was another one of them. Tyreen Powell, 6'5", 225. Nice size there for a linebacker. They lose 4 linebackers. 3 of them departed. Mohamed Toure, he's out due to an injury he suffered here in the preseason. He's led them in sacks for the past 2 years. That's a big loss. I thought he was going to be a first-teamer Big Ten this year. Then he got hurt. Overall, they've done a good job getting these younger guys on the field to prepare them for this enhanced role, but I do think that more regressions in session for this season.
I like Hamilton. I think he's a solid guy. I expect him to get a lot of game time this year. Played in 10 games last year, 21 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. I think he has some serious potential. And Aaron Lewis, also another guy, three tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. I just get a little concerned with the experience of these guys. They have played in some games, but they're replacing a whole lot. And it seems like the depth is really an issue here. If someone goes down early with an injury, potentially they could find themselves in a really deep hole on the defensive line. The front 7 will be a little bit weak this year. But I think Schiano's going to hopefully try and coach these guys and build them up a little bit and try and turn players that may not be the best on paper into a decent performing defensive line just because the coaching I think is really solid here. But in general, I like this front 7. It's depleted and it doesn't have a whole lot of depth, so hopefully they can step up this year.
Deion Jennings at linebacker, one of the lone seniors I see on the depth chart. It's really a front 6, they run 4-2-5, but one positional group I'm really excited for is the secondary. They did a much better job of not allowing as many completions last year. Went from a 67% opponent comp rate to 56%. The TD to INT ratio through 2 years has not been great, Nick. In Schiano's first 22 games since coming back, 46 touchdowns, 15 picks. That's not good. I want to see them progress in that area. It's a big-time year for the Knights secondary, though. No turnover here. Trey Avery is really the only notable departure. Not only do they get back vets, they also get a handful of those young players that shined as well that we were just talking about. They were able to get some guys on the field in all 3 levels of this defense. Keyshawn Abram, he was forced into action early in the year. Ended up panning out for him. 10 pass breakups, 44 tackles, 1 team MVP. So he got forced into action and was able to deliver big time. Shaquan Lloyd made some good plays in the Tax Slayer Bowl. He's a pretty hard hitter. Avery Young, sure-handed tackler, he had 80 stops a season ago. He converted from corner to safety last year and thrived, so obviously there's more growth for him to undergo. Christian Aziz, 7-3 stops, 9 tackles for loss. 2 good safeties that can play in the box, Nick. Also really like Max Melton. Bo's brother was a little rusty during the middle of the season after a suspension. He wasn't great when coming back, but early in the season he was elite. 3 picks, 28 tackles, 6 pass breakups for the most part. He was their best cornerback, which is saying a lot because I really like with these guys. Robert Long being another one. I know I'm talking a lot here, but this is just a loaded secondary, Nick. 10 pass breakups. He only started in 1 game last year. Also had 2 forced fumbles. That's great production for a rotational defensive back.
There is so much talent in the secondary. It's incredible. Max Melton, I love what he can do. 25 tackles last year, 5 pass breakups, a forced fumble as well. Solid guy across the board. Isaiah and Young, very talented, both of them. 6 pass breakups between the two of them, forced fumble as well for Young, 77 tackles for Young, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Isaiah, 8.5 tackles for loss. I love the production for these guys. This secondary is so good. I expect them to take a huge step forward this year, and I think it'll be hard to pass on Rutgers early on in the season. I think they're going to be able to break up a lot of passes and play some great defense in the secondary, and I love the potential for these guys.
Scarlett Knights defense will more than likely stay around the same than it is to, progress due to the front 7 question marks, but again, the young players at all 3 levels are very encouraging. We're going to schedule preview and prediction. I think this team is really better than a 3-win team. Just who are they going to be? This is a brutal schedule. Just look at the back half. You got Minnesota, Michigan, MSU, PSU. You also play Ohio State on the road. I think Boston College, that could be an interesting matchup for them. I think they could probably win that game. Overall, I just don't know who they're going to beat, Nick. I think this will definitely be better than a 3-win team. I think the offense as a whole will progress. The secondary we just raved about. I don't know. It's hard to find more than 3 wins on the schedule.
I love this Rutgers team. I love the work Greg Schiano has done. I'm super impressed with it. I think this is the right direction for the program overall. I think they have completely changed over the last 3 seasons, and I love what they have done. When we look at this schedule, there's just so many heavy hitters on it, especially on the road. It's going to be tough to find more than 3 wins here, which is really sad because this team is definitely on paper more than a 3-win team, but the schedule is doing them absolutely no favor, especially the back half of it. At home to Michigan, then at Michigan State, then at home to Penn State. Brutal slate in November. I think they could potentially pick up a game against Maryland or Minnesota if I'm looking to see them maybe get another win in the Big Ten. I think those are 2 options there, especially late in the season. Maybe they catch Maryland off guard. I think that's really a possibility. Maybe they go 4-8 there. But in general, this is such a tough schedule. They always play a tough schedule every year for Rutgers. They belong in the Big Ten, in my opinion. I think they've shown that over the last 2 seasons. They've developed a little bit better, and they look a solid program, a steady program in the conference. They're no longer the punching bag, but still tough to play the likes of Ohio State, Michigan State every year. So 3-9 is a solid prediction for these guys, but they're definitely a lot better on paper than that.
Now, I do think that at least 2 of those games against, the Iowas or the Penn States, one of those teams from, September 24th and November 19th, I think at least 2 of those games will be 1-score games. I will make that bold prediction right there. So we'll see what happens. I think this team will definitely be better. Like you said, Maryland out on the road late in the year. Late in the year, it's easy to steal a win, especially if that team's deflated in Maryland. That's possible this year with how their defense is. So I think you're right. They could definitely snag a win there. I think they could also snag one against Boston State College. So we'll see what happens. As always, Nick, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really like the progress this team has made, and I really expect big things out of Rutgers in the future.
That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.